Your policy doesn't cover this type of damage, the insurance agent said coldly as we stood in the charred remains of my home. That's impossible, I replied, my voice rising. I've had comprehensive coverage for 15 years. Calvin Drake adjusted his expensive tie, unmoved by the destruction around us. Mr. Reeves, I understand you're upset, but there are exclusions. I'm Marcus Reeves, 50 years old, a volunteer firefighter with 15 years of service. Last week, I saved the Henderson family from a burning building. Now you're denying my claim? Drake's lips curled into a smirk. It's just business. I nodded calmly. I understand. Hit that subscribe button now if you believe heroes deserve justice instead of betrayal. Only someone who thinks selfless acts should be punished would refuse. The motel room door creaked as I pushed it open. Patricia was sitting on the edge of the bed, phone pressed to her ear. When she saw me, she quickly ended the call. Who was that? I asked, dropping my keys on the scratched dresser. Just Lisa from work. Her voice was steady, but her eyes didn't meet mine. How did it go with the insurance? I sat down heavily. They're denying the claim. Drake says saving the Hendersons put me in an extraordinary risk category. Oh, she said, her reaction strangely muted. No anger, no outrage, just nothing. Well, we still have our emergency fund. That night, as Patricia slept, memories of the past week flickered through my mind. The night of the fire, I'd been awakened by the smell of smoke. Not from our house, from 2 doors down. I remembered sprinting toward the Hendersons' place, the heat blistering my skin as I broke through their back door. When I finally made it to the hospital after pulling all 5 family members to safety, Patricia had seemed annoyed. Not worried about my burns or relieved I was alive, just inconvenienced. Your hero complex is going to get you killed someday, she'd muttered while texting someone. The following day, sifting through the remains of our home, things didn't add up. Patricia's grandmother's jewelry box, supposedly kept in our bedroom, wasn't among the debris. Her collection of designer handbags, normally stored in the closet that had completely burned, was nowhere to be found. More red flags appeared in the days that followed. Patricia changed all her passwords. Late-night calls in the bathroom with the shower running. A receipt for a storage unit rental in her purse. After 22 years of marriage, I knew when something was wrong. But confrontation wouldn't get me answers. No, if I wanted the truth, I needed evidence. And I needed to be smarter than whoever was playing this game. I'm heading to the station for a few hours, I told Patricia 3 days later. Chief wants to go over the Henderson rescue for the report. Her nod was distracted, eyes already back on her phone. The moment I pulled out of the motel parking lot, I circled back and parked behind the building. 20 minutes later, I slipped back into our room and installed a tiny camera facing the bed, disguised as a smoke detector, an irony not lost on me. That afternoon, I met Ryan, my fellow firefighter of 12 years, at a diner across town. I wasn't going to mention it, he said, stirring his coffee uncomfortably, but I saw Patricia last week at Riverfront Cafe. She was with some guy in a suit. They looked close. My stomach twisted. What day was this? Tuesday. Around noon. 2 days before our house burned. Back at the motel, I accessed our joint account statements. Patricia had withdrawn $25,000, our entire emergency fund, last Monday, the day before Ryan saw her with the mystery man. That night, after Patricia fell asleep, I used her tablet she'd left unlocked. Her search history included insurance claim denials and property foreclosure process. Even more disturbing was an email thread with Calvin Drake, dated 3 weeks ago, with the subject line, Potential Target Assessment. My hands shook as I retrieved the cloud backup of our home security system. The last footage from the day before the fire showed Patricia opening our front door. Standing on our porch was Calvin Drake, the same insurance adjuster who had smirked as he denied my claim. Yellow caution tape still surrounded what remained of our home when I returned the following morning. The fire marshal had ruled it an electrical fire, but something wasn't adding up. Crouching near where our kitchen had been, I noticed an unusual burn pattern on the remaining floorboards, a splash pattern consistent with an accelerant. "You shouldn't be here, sir," called a voice. I turned to see a young woman in a Pinnacle Insurance polo shirt, clipboard in hand. "I'm the homeowner," I replied. Her eyes widened. "Oh, Mr. Reeves, I'm Melissa, Mr. Drake's assistant. I'm just doing some follow-up documentation." "Can I ask you something, Melissa?" I kept my voice casual. "How many claims has Drake denied in the past year?" She hesitated. "I shouldn't, please. My life's been destroyed here. He has an arrangement," she whispered after a moment. "Certain high-value properties get flagged. First responders, teachers, nurses, people who don't have the resources to fight back legally. Has he done this before?" 12 times in 3 years. Always the same pattern." She glanced nervously over her shoulder. "Look, I've already said too much." That evening, I followed Patricia to a storage facility on the edge of town. Through my binoculars, I watched her unlock a unit and slide open the door. Inside, I glimpsed furniture and boxes, possessions she'd claimed were lost in the fire. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture far uglier than I'd imagined. Using my firefighter credentials, I requested a list of all house fires involving first responders in our county over the past 3 years. The data was disturbing. 14 fires, all ruled accidental, all with insurance claims denied. I reached out to Michael Donovan, an arson investigator I'd worked with for years. "These burn patterns don't look accidental," Michael said, examining the photos I'd taken. "This has the hallmarks of a professional torch job. Enough to destroy the property, but controlled enough to avoid spreading to neighboring homes." My hidden camera had captured 3 conversations between Patricia and Drake in our motel room during my shifts. Their scheme was brazen. Drake identified high-value properties with vulnerable owners, first responders, teachers, nurses, who would be unlikely to afford lengthy legal battles. Patricia, with access to my station's personnel files through volunteer work, provided insider information on potential targets. The Henderson fire was perfect timing, Patricia told Drake in one recording. Marcus would never ignore a family in danger, especially with kids. We knew he'd rush in, giving us grounds for the extraordinary risk exclusion. After the claim denial, Drake's real estate partner would approach the desperate homeowner with a low-ball cash offer. Just enough to cover immediate needs, but a fraction of the property's value. The property would then be renovated and flipped for massive profit. The storage unit contained more than our possessions. Patricia had files on 7 other firefighters and their families, future targets. My hands shook with rage as I handed everything over to Michael. "This is bigger than insurance fraud, Marcus," he said grimly. "This is organized arson and racketeering. We need to bring in the State Insurance Commission and possibly the FBI. Subscribe now if you stand for fairness and strategic justice. Only someone who believes betrayal should go unpunished would hesitate." "We need to catch them in the act," I told Michael and Ryan as we sat in the back of the fire station's meeting room. "If we confront them now, they'll destroy evidence and cover their tracks." "The State Insurance Commissioner wants more than recordings," Michael agreed. "We need documented proof of their coordination and the financial trail." We developed a 3-phase plan. First, Ryan would pose as a potential home seller in financial distress, approaching Drake's real estate partner. I would leak information about another firefighter's valuable home, a fictional story about Dave Miller's waterfront property being in foreclosure. "Patricia's already asking questions about Dave's place," I confirmed 3 days later, reviewing footage from the hidden camera. For Phase 2, the insurance commissioner provided specialized recording equipment. We installed cameras in Patricia's storage unit, Drake's office, and the motel room. The State Banking Commission subpoenaed financial records showing suspicious deposits into offshore accounts after each denied claim. The final phase was the most dangerous and personal. I needed to confront them directly while wearing a wire. I invited Drake to meet at a coffee shop, claiming I was ready to accept a lowball offer on my property. When he arrived, Patricia was with him. "You two seem comfortable together," I observed as they sat down. Patricia's eyes widened in momentary panic before she regained composure. "Calvin's helping us navigate this difficult situation." "That's interesting," I said calmly, "because I thought you were helping him identify targets for insurance fraud." Drake's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. "I don't know what you're implying." I slid a folder across the table containing photos from their meetings, bank statements, and storage unit receipts. "We should discuss this privately," Patricia hissed. Name your price. 25,000 to keep quiet, Drake added. The exact amount you need. I smiled. Actually, I need you to repeat that for the 6 investigators listening to this conversation right now. On cue, State Insurance Commission agents emerged from nearby tables. The color drained from Patricia's face as she realized what was happening. It was just business, Drake stammered as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. I understand, I replied. The courthouse was packed the day of the preliminary hearing. News of the arrest had spread throughout the county, and the gallery was filled with firefighters, nurses, and teachers, all potential targets of the scheme. We've identified 16 cases in total, the prosecutor announced, her voice echoing through the courtroom. First responders and public servants systematically targeted because of their vulnerability and valuable properties. The investigation uncovered 4 more accomplices at Pinnacle Insurance who had helped falsify documents and backdate policies. Drake's real estate partner, who'd purchased 11 properties at severely reduced prices, was arrested while trying to flee the country. When my turn came to testify, I looked directly at Patricia. 22 years of marriage reduced to this moment. The defendants didn't just commit insurance fraud, I stated. They exploited the very people who risked their lives to protect this community. As evidence mounted, both Drake and Patricia accepted plea deals to avoid longer sentences. The judge was unsparing in his assessment. The court finds the defendants' actions particularly reprehensible, he declared. Targeting those who serve our community represents a profound breach of trust. In addition to prison sentences, the judge ordered full restitution to all victims and the dissolution of over $4 million in fraudulent real estate transactions. After the verdict, the fire chief approached me with tears in his eyes. You didn't just save yourself, Marcus. You saved all of us. He gestured to the firefighters lining the courthouse steps. Your integrity protected families who would have been next. I nodded, feeling a complex mixture of vindication and loss. Justice had been served, but at the cost of everything familiar in my life. 3 months after the sentencing, I requested a meeting with Patricia at the Women's Correctional Facility. I wasn't sure why I needed this closure, but something in me couldn't move forward without it. The visiting room was sparse, just metal tables bolted to the floor and uncomfortable chairs. Patricia looked smaller somehow, the prison jumpsuit hanging loosely on her frame. The confident woman who had shared my bed for decades was gone. Why did you agree to see me? She asked, her voice hollow. I needed to understand, I replied. 22 years, Patricia. Was any of it real? She stared at her hands. It was real in the beginning, but then you were always gone. Always saving someone else. The hero everyone could count on, except your wife. So you decided to burn down our life? It wasn't supposed to be our house, she whispered. Just the others. Drake approached me when I was vulnerable and angry. It started small, just information about other firefighters' homes. Then it grew. I studied the face I once knew better than my own. You could have talked to me. You could have left. Would you have listened? Really listened? Your whole identity is wrapped up in being the hero, Marcus. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been absent in ways I hadn't recognized. But her response to that absence had destroyed lives. I'm not here for reconciliation, I said finally. I just needed to see you to end this chapter properly. As I stood to leave, she reached for my hand but stopped short. I'm sorry, for what it's worth. I nodded. Take care of yourself, Patricia. Walking away, I felt a weight lifting, not forgiveness, but acceptance. The past couldn't be changed, but it no longer controlled my future. With the insurance fraud exposed, the company was forced to honor all previously denied claims. My settlement allowed me to purchase a modest cabin on the edge of town, smaller than our previous home, but entirely mine. The first thing I built was a workshop in the backyard. My grandfather had been a carpenter, and I'd always wanted to follow in his footsteps before firefighting called to me. Now, with my hands shaping raw wood into something useful, I found unexpected peace. You're pretty good at this, Ryan commented one Saturday as we installed custom shelves in the living room. Turns out there's more than one way to build something, I replied. My life simplified in ways that brought clarity. Without the large mortgage and Patricia's expensive tastes, I found freedom in having less. The station agreed to my request for reduced hours as I approached retirement. Still a firefighter, but with boundaries I'd never allowed myself before. The most healing addition to my new life came unexpectedly. Responding to a barn fire outside town, I found a half-grown Australian shepherd huddled beneath a wheelbarrow, terrified but unharmed. No one's claimed him, the chief said 2 weeks later. Shelter's getting full. Edison, named for the electrical fire that orphaned him, became my constant companion. He slept at the foot of my bed and waited patiently on the porch while I worked in the shop. "Just us now, buddy," I told him one evening as we watched the sunset from the front porch. But that's enough. For the first time in years, I believed it was true. The envelope arrived almost exactly 1 year after the fire. No return address, just my name and the cabin's location. Inside was an invitation, cream cardstock with elegant black lettering. "Emma Henderson cordially invites you to her high school graduation." Emma, the eldest Henderson child, the one I'd carried out last from the burning house, unconscious from smoke inhalation. I remembered her father's eyes as I placed her in the paramedic's care. A handwritten note accompanied the invitation. "Mr. Reeves, you may not remember me, but I remember you. You're the reason I'm alive to graduate. What happened to you afterward made the news here. I wanted you to know that your sacrifice wasn't for nothing. I've been accepted to the fire academy for fall semester. I want to give someone else the second chance you gave me. My family would be honored if you would attend my graduation, Emma." Something broke open inside me. All the purpose I'd lost in the betrayal and aftermath came flooding back in a different form. I hadn't just saved lives that night. I'd saved futures. The Hendersons greeted me like family at the ceremony. Emma, now 18 and determined, introduced me to everyone as the reason I'm here today. "Your story inspired the whole town," Mr. Henderson confided. "The way you handled everything with dignity instead of vengeance. People won't forget that." Neither would I. 2 years after losing everything, I stood on the porch of my cabin, watching the sun rise over the valley. Edison lounged at my feet, gray now appearing around his muzzle. My workshop had grown into a small business. Custom furniture, tables, chairs, bed frames, crafted from reclaimed wood salvaged from fire scenes. Each piece contained history. Destruction transformed into something beautiful and useful. The county had established a first responders protection fund based on the restitution money from the insurance fraud case. I served on the board, ensuring no one in our profession would ever face what I had experienced. Emma called regularly from the fire academy, eager to share her progress. "I'm top of my class in rescue techniques," she'd announced proudly last week. I often thought about what Patricia had said during our final meeting, about my identity being wrapped up in being the hero. She wasn't entirely wrong, but I'd learned that heroism takes many forms. Sometimes it's rushing into burning buildings. Sometimes it's having the courage to rebuild after everything is lost. The scars remained, both on my skin and within my heart. But scars don't just mark where we've been wounded, they show where we've healed. Subscribe now if you believe real strength is rebuilding better after betrayal. Only those who think giving up is the answer would walk away.